I adored my wife completely, until one quiet afternoon in the car, when she unintentionally revealed something I'll never forget. We were driving down through a sleepy part of Connecticut. I was halfway through telling her about a weird email I got from a client, something about numbers not matching up, when she interrupted me, barely glancing up from her phone, and said, "You know, it's exhausting pretending like nothing's going on." At first, I thought she meant the mortgage stress, or maybe her sister's drama with the custody case. I chuckled, kind of half nervous, and asked, "What do you mean?" She looked out the window for a second, lips tight, then shrugged like she hadn't said anything at all, just went right back to scrolling. No explanation, no follow-up. I let it hang for maybe 2 minutes. Then I asked again, casually but a little sharper this time, "What did you mean by that? About pretending?" She didn't answer, just shifted her legs, adjusted her sunglasses, and let the silence stew like it was a game. I stared at the road, hands sweating against the steering wheel, something thick and leaden starting to press against my ribs. She finally said, "Forget it. You'll just twist it anyway." Now that was odd, because that kind of passive little dig wasn't typical Jessica. She had claws, sure, but she didn't usually hide them in velvet. And then it hit me. She was baiting me, poking around to see how much I already knew. That wasn't frustration in her voice. That was calculation. So I played along. "No, really, Jess. Talk to me." She turned to me with that half-tilted head she used when she was about to sell a lie. She said, "I meant the marriage. It hasn't felt right for a while. But you already know that, don't you?" That caught me off guard because no, I didn't know that. 2 days earlier she had left a note in my suitcase before a work trip. Some flirty inside joke about missing me already. A week before that, she had dragged me into a furniture store and made me help her pick a new rug for the living room because we deserve cozy stuff like this. There had been no mention of distance, no talks, not even passive-aggressive cold shoulders. Just a quiet consistency, like she wanted to maintain the illusion more than the reality. I asked her, very plainly, "Is there someone else?" And the way she looked at me, I'll never get it out of my head. Not angry, not guilty, not sad. She looked amused, like I was a slow kid catching on to a joke everyone else already knew. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Does it matter?" That's when the shift happened. Not in her, in me. It was like a pane of glass cracked right down the center. The world split into before and after. Because it wasn't just that she was cheating. It was that she didn't care if I knew. I pulled over, right onto the shoulder. She sighed dramatically like I'd inconvenienced her, then started applying lip gloss. I stared at her while she smoothed it on, like she wasn't even in the middle of detonating our life together. "What's his name?" I asked. She said, "You're being dramatic." And I just sat there, staring at her in that absurd silence, trying to understand what kind of person answers a question like that with a dodge like that. And not because she's scared, but because she knows she has control. Because she knows she's already won. She leaned back in her seat, opened the window and said, "I told him I wouldn't tell you. It's better this way." And in that moment, everything in me stopped caring about who he was. The betrayal wasn't just in the cheating. It was in how calculated she'd made it all. How she'd managed the timing, the words, the manipulations, down to the perfect note of mystery, as if even her exposure had to be curated. So I turned the engine back on. We drove the rest of the way in silence. She hummed once or twice, checked her phone like she was waiting for a text that never came, and I just kept driving. But in my head, I was already somewhere else. Running timelines, cross-checking memories, piecing together the puzzle she clearly assumed I was too blind to solve. Because what Jessica didn't know yet was that she'd already told me more than she realized. And I wasn't going to confront her the way she expected. I had something else in mind. The next morning, Jessica left early. She claimed she had a team call at the office even though it was a Sunday. She didn't even glance at me when she walked out, just grabbed her beige tote, sprayed that same perfume she used to only wear on date nights, and disappeared down the hallway like she was heading into a scene she had rehearsed 100 times. I didn't follow her. I waited exactly 6 minutes. Then I opened her laptop. I knew the password, still my birthday, which somehow made it worse. I wasn't proud of snooping. I've never done it before. But you can't exactly play fair when you realize you've been living inside someone else's lie. She hadn't logged out of her messaging app. There were 2 conversations pinned. One was with her sister. The other was with someone named Kay. I opened it. The first thing I saw was a photo she'd sent the night before. Her legs in that ridiculous champagne silk robe, glass of wine in her hand, some lazy caption like, "You'd better be dreaming about this." I felt like I'd swallowed fire. The messages stretched back weeks. Inside jokes I didn't recognize. Pet names I'd never heard. And in between it all, plans. Meetings. Excuses. Cancellations of our dinners. Her lies laid out like receipts. One message from Kay said, "He doesn't suspect anything?" She replied, "He's sweet, not stupid. But sweet is easier to fool." I didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, reading, rereading until the words stopped meaning anything. Until I felt like I wasn't even in my own house anymore. Like everything in it had been staged around me. Then a plan started to take shape. She was lying so smoothly because she thought I'd never react. That was her mistake. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to listen. Watch. Let her keep underestimating me. So I waited. She came back that afternoon wearing new earrings and a fake smile. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted Thai food. I said sure. Let her pour me wine, pick the show, wrap her legs around mine like nothing was wrong. But I was counting every tell. The way she turned her phone face down. The way she faked a laugh 3 beats too late. The way she leaned into me like she was performing for an invisible camera. The next day, I drove to her office. Took 10 minutes of sitting in the parking lot before I saw her walk out. Not alone. He was tall, stupidly good-looking, tan, white teeth, that kind of casual confidence that usually comes from family money and a lifetime of being told yes. He touched her lower back as she got into his car. She didn't even look around. I followed them. Not close. Not suspicious. Just enough to see them pull into the back of a bar we used to go to. Back when we were still building our life. They walked in like they owned the place. Like nothing in the world could touch them. I didn't follow them inside. Instead, I went home, printed out the entire message thread from her laptop, highlighted every date she lied to me, and made a neat little packet with a cover page that said, "You really thought I wouldn't figure it out?" Then I waited for her to come home. She did. A few hours later, hair a little messier, perfume reapplied. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, walked past me on the couch and said, "You're watching this again?" Like the past 6 hours hadn't happened. I waited until she was brushing her teeth before I walked into the bathroom and handed her the packet. She looked at it like it was a bill she didn't want to pay. Flipped the pages slowly. Said nothing for a solid minute. Then, with a straight face, she said, "This is such an invasion of my privacy. No apology. No denial. Just a complaint." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I finally understood the depth of what I was dealing with. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't shame. Jessica was offended. Offended that I had interrupted her game. "You're mad I caught you?" I asked. She looked up at me, jaw locked. "I'm mad you went through my stuff. That says a lot more about you than it does about me." I didn't hit the wall. I didn't scream. I just said one sentence. "You know it says a lot? The fact that you made it so easy." Her mouth twitched. Just a little. The crack in the mask. The smallest sign that maybe this hadn't gone according to plan. Then she wiped toothpaste from her mouth and said, "So what now? You want a divorce?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger wearing her face. She didn't flinch when I said, "No, I don't want a divorce." For a second, the only second that night, she looked confused. Not scared. Not regretful. Just off balance. Like the script she had in her head suddenly skipped a page. I let her sit in that confusion. Let her wonder. Because that was the first moment in weeks, maybe months, where I had the upper hand, and I wasn't about to waste it. "I'm not giving you the out," I said. "Not yet." She folded her arms, leaned against the bathroom doorframe, and gave me that look. That condescending, icy stare that made me feel like I was furniture in the wrong spot. "So what then? You just want to punish me for a while?" "No," I said. "I want to watch you try to lie your way out of this. I want to see how long you can pretend this is still your game." She laughed. Sharp, dry. like I just told her I was planning to become an astronaut. You're serious? Oh, completely. Her eyes narrowed. What's the angle? And there it was. The real Jessica, the version that existed beneath the polished sarcasm and designer perfume. Cold. Strategic. A woman who didn't process consequences as regret, only as obstacles. And in that moment, I realized she didn't care that she'd hurt me. She only cared about whether she could still control the narrative. You'll see, I told her. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of pain, though yeah, it was there. But because my mind was calculating. While she was in the other room, pretending to scroll through home decor like she hadn't detonated our reality, I was building the next move. The next day I messaged Kay. Not from my phone. From a new number with a name he'd recognize. Meet me at the Bay Street coffee shop. 5 p.m. Come alone. G. I knew two things. Jessica always called him Kay, and she never let him text her full name. Too risky. But she once told me about that coffee shop, before I knew who he was. Said it had the best banana bread in the city, and that she went there sometimes to think. So I waited across the street. Sat in my car, sunglasses on, engine idling. He showed up 10 minutes early. He wore that smug look you only get from thinking you've won something you didn't earn. He ordered coffee. Waited. Checked his phone. No one came. After 15 minutes, he left. I sent one message as he walked down the street. Nice jacket. Didn't know she liked corduroy. He stopped. Looked around. Didn't see me. His thumbs hovered over the screen for a while before he shoved the phone back in his pocket and walked faster. I didn't want to fight him. I didn't want to threaten him. I wanted him to feel watched. Because the one thing these guys never expect, the guys who slip into other people's marriages through back doors, is the quiet husband waking up early. That evening, I told Jessica we needed to talk. She rolled her eyes. She rolled her eyes. Still on this? She said. We're not going to get anywhere if you're stuck in surveillance mode. Sit, I said. She sat. I opened a folder. Yes, another one. This time with financial documents. Not hers. Mine. I'd spent the whole day shifting accounts, changing passwords, cutting off access. I'm not leaving yet, I said. But you're locked out of everything. Cards. Accounts. The house is in my name, always has been. And that little rainy day fund you've been building? It's frozen. Her face didn't register shock. It registered irritation. As if I'd taken away her favorite toy mid-game. You're pathetic, she said. You think this is going to make you feel better? I stared her down. No, but it's going to make me feel clear. She stood. Walked past me like she wasn't even in the middle of losing the ground under her feet. And then she dropped the final card, the one she'd been saving. You think he's the only one? I didn't answer. She turned at the door. You think this is about love? It's about options. You were one. He was another. That's how it works now. And then she left. I sat there in the silence, letting the echo of her words settle into the walls. It wasn't heartbreak. Not anymore. It was something far colder, and far more focused. Jessica didn't come home that night. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't pace the living room like some wounded cliché. Instead, I poured a glass of water, sat at the dining table and started taking notes. Names, dates, lies. I mapped it all out on a yellow legal pad like I was solving a murder, which, in a way, I was. Just not of a person. Of a marriage. By midnight, I had a timeline so tight it made her whole story fall apart. I could see it now, how she'd layered the lies. How she'd start a fake argument just to justify storming out. How she'd manufacture drama about my job. Accuse me of disconnecting. So she could go spend the night reconnecting with someone else. It wasn't impulsive. It was systematic. And for the first time, I wasn't angry. I was impressed. She came back the next afternoon like nothing had happened. Hair washed, new shirt. Slight tan like she'd spent the morning on a rooftop. She dropped her keys in the bowl and looked at me, surprised to find me home. I thought you had meetings today, she said. I said nothing, just slid the legal pad across the table toward her. She picked it up, skimmed it, and slowly lowered herself into the chair like she wasn't sure if she was reading evidence or a threat. You've been busy, she said flatly. Not as busy as you, I replied. She closed the pad and leaned back, folding her arms. So what? You want to go public? Embarrass me? Humiliate yourself in the process. I shook my head. No, that would be giving you a stage. And you don't deserve one. That flicker again. That crack in her calm. She wasn't used to being met with strategy. Jessica thrived in chaos, arguments, confusion, emotional reactions she could twist to her advantage. But I wasn't giving her that. I was giving her structure. And she hated it. I want something else, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, this should be good. I want a full confession. Every name, every date, every place. I want it in writing. I want the truth, as much as you're capable of giving it. She laughed, actually laughed. You really think I'm going to write you a cheating diary? No, I think you're going to give me leverage. She tilted her head. And why would I ever do that? Because otherwise, I'll tell your boss you've been using the corporate card to book hotel rooms under fake names. Her smile dropped like a light switch. You're bluffing. Am I? I slid another page across the table. A printout of a receipt, Holiday Inn Express, 2 towns over. Billed to J. Carmichael Consulting. Her employer. She stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. 2 rooms, I said. One of them never used. You were sloppy. And if I found this in 2 hours, imagine what someone with a reason could do. She was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up, walked to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of wine, poured herself a glass and downed half of it before speaking. What do you actually want from me? She asked. I want the truth. No, you don't. You want a story you can use to feel superior. No, I want the story you've been keeping from me. Because once I have that, you're done. No leverage, no power. Just exposure. She sat back down, swirled her glass, and smirked. You think this is going to save your dignity? No, but it's going to bury your performance. We stared at each other for a long time. A silence thicker than anything we'd ever sat through in therapy or family dinners or car rides home from weddings. And then she said, slowly, there's one more. I nodded. I figured. He was earlier, before K, before I even realized I could get away with it. And did I know him? She smiled cruelly. You'd shaken his hand. My throat tightened. Who? She leaned forward, eyes glinting, voice low. Your friend Mark. 2 years ago. Ski trip. While you were passed out drunk on the couch. I didn't blink. Didn't react. But something inside me shifted. Pressure valve released. I'd suspected. Deep down, in that part of you that stores things you're not ready to believe. I'd felt it. The strange tension between them. The way Mark always looked nervous around me after that trip. The way she once joked that, Mark's actually kind of hot if you tilt your head. 2 years. She carried that with no guilt. No slip-ups. No hesitation. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. She smiled. Because now you'll never really know how many there were. You'll always wonder. I nodded. Good. I said. That's exactly the kind of woman I need you to be, for what comes next. And I stood up. She followed me into the hallway. Her wine glass still in hand, barefoot now, like this was just some drawn-out domestic spat and not the beginning of her personal apocalypse. What do you mean what comes next? She asked, the sarcasm cracking just slightly around the edges. I didn't answer. I just opened the door to my office and let her follow me in. I had already laid everything out on the desk. Receipts, message transcripts, screenshots, financial summaries, and her printed confession draft. Half empty, half lies, but still enough to start a fire. On top of the pile was a thick manila envelope. She didn't notice it at first. She was too busy scanning the room, probably calculating how much damage she could control. She finally asked, What's this? You remember those friends of yours? Lauren and Mitch, I said, casually picking up the envelope. The ones you always said were too perfect to be real? What about them? They're real estate agents now. I had lunch with them last week. Her brow creased. Why? I tossed the envelope onto the floor at her feet. She flinched. She didn't pick it up. Because the house is on the market. Her mouth opened, then closed. You're bluffing. You can't. I can. I cut in. And I have. The photos are already scheduled. Open house is next weekend. You should probably move your things before then. You're insane. No, I said, calmer than I felt. I'm just done pretending this is salvageable. She finally stooped to grab the envelope, flipped it open, saw the documents. Stamped, notarized, official. You did this behind my back? She said, disbelief dripping from every syllable. You had someone else's hands down your back for the last year, Jessica. Let's not pretend we're suddenly fans of transparency. That hit her. Not because of the insult, but because I said it so plainly, like I was just noting the weather. She took a slow breath. You think you're punishing me, but you're the one burning everything down. No, I replied. You burned it. I'm just salvaging what's left. Then I walked past her, grabbed my coat, and headed for the door. Where are you going? She called after me. To give Kay a call, I said without turning around. That stopped her cold. You wouldn't. I turned, met her eyes. He has a girlfriend. A real one. You know that, right? Now her face changed. The color drained. All that confidence, all that cruelty. It stumbled for the first time. You're bluffing, she said again, quieter this time. No, I'm being thorough. You weaponized silence. I'm returning the favor with volume. She stepped toward me. Please don't involve him. This is between us. Oh, now it's between us? I laughed. 3 affairs in, now it's personal? And just before I stepped outside, I left her with one last thing. Get your confession written. Make it clean. Make it ugly. And if I don't have it by Friday, your office, your boss, your parents, and your golden boy will all get a copy. Then I shut the door behind me. It was drizzling. Cold. Perfect. I didn't go to Kay. Not yet. I had someone else to meet first. Because what Jessica didn't know was that I'd already started talking. One conversation at a time. One phone call, one mutual friend, one breadcrumb. Not to ruin her. To unmask her. Piece by piece. I met with Mark first. Not because I wanted to see him. Frankly, he was the last person I wanted to look at, let alone share a table with. But out of everyone tangled up in Jessica's mess, he was the one with the oldest thread. And I needed to pull it. We met at a quiet diner just outside town. The kind with sticky menus and burnt coffee, where nobody asks questions and everybody minds their own. Mark walked in 5 minutes late, sunglasses on indoors, trying to pretend he was cool instead of terrified. He spotted me, paused just long enough to look like he was considering walking out, then dragged himself over and sat across from me like he was lowering himself into an electric chair. Thanks for coming, I said, flipping my coffee spoon in slow circles. I didn't have much of a choice, did I? He muttered. You always had a choice, Mark. That was the problem. He didn't reply, just stared at his hands. Let's not waste time, I said. I know. About the ski trip. About the night I passed out. About you and Jessica. He still didn't look up. His shoulders dropped like someone had finally let the air out of him. She told you? He asked, voice dry. She told me everything. Or at least enough to make everything else fall into place. Mark nodded slowly. It was a mistake. No, I said, tapping my fingers once on the table. Cheating on your friend is a mistake. Doing it in my house while I was unconscious 10 feet away. That's strategy. His jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to defend himself, but the guilt had already taken root years ago. That's what I was counting on. I'm not here to scream at you, Mark, I said. I'm not here to throw a punch or make a scene. I'm here because I want to know why. He looked surprised. Maybe even relieved. Maybe he thought this would be a public humiliation, not a deposition. I don't know, he said finally. She made me feel like I could have something I wasn't supposed to want. She said it was just one time, that she needed to feel alive, that it didn't mean anything. I didn't even believe her, but I let it happen. I was weak. Not just weak, I said. You were complicit. He didn't argue. I'm not going to blow up your life, Mark, but I needed to hear you say it, because she said it with a smile, and I needed to hear it without one. He looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. She's not who you think she is. I know exactly who she is, I said. Now I'm asking you, how many others do you know about? He hesitated. That was the only time, he said. Not what I asked. Mark blinked. His silence told me everything. I let him stew for a moment before standing up and sliding a napkin across the table. On it, a name. Not his. He read it. Stared. His eyes widened. You think he? I don't think. I know. I just needed to see how you'd react. Mark let out a quiet breath. I'm sorry, man. I really am. No, you're not, I said. You're just glad it wasn't your name on that napkin. I left without finishing my coffee. That night, Jessica tried to act like nothing had changed. She greeted me at the door in that robe again, the one from the pictures, as if we were still playing dress-up in her fantasy. I walked right past her. She followed. You're late, she said, a false pout in her voice. I wasn't on a date, if that's what you're implying, I said, hanging up my coat. She crossed her arms, leaning in the doorway of the bedroom. You met with him, didn't you? I didn't respond. You think digging through the past is going to give you some kind of moral high ground? She said, voice rising now. I turned slowly. I don't want the high ground, Jessica. I want the last word. She scoffed. Oh, please. What are you going to do? Post the screenshots on Facebook? Write a blog? Tell your mommy and daddy what the bad lady did? I stepped toward her. I'm going to dismantle the version of you that still exists in other people's minds. Quietly, efficiently, with receipts. She didn't say anything. You built your image carefully, I said. The loyal wife, the career woman, the one who puts up with her boring, steady husband. The truth is, you're the storm that walks into a room and rearranges people's lives like furniture. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her confidence was slipping one sarcastic comment at a time. She wasn't used to being outmaneuvered. Not like this. I want the letter by Friday, I said. Real names, real dates, full timeline, and I want it printed, hand-delivered. No games. Or what? She whispered. Or I walk into your office and give a copy to your CEO, I said. And while I'm there, I'll give one to your HR rep, your favorite intern, and the receptionist you always mocked for having roots in her hair. You wouldn't, she hissed. I would, I replied. But I won't need to. You're going to give it to me, because you're too proud to watch the narrative collapse without your hand in it. I turned and walked to the kitchen. She didn't follow this time. She stood in the doorway for a few more seconds, then disappeared down the hall. For the first time since all this began, I didn't hear her heels clack. Just silence. That was the sound of control being pried out of her hands. And I'd only just begun. Friday came. She waited until the last possible moment, of course she did. The letter was left on the hallway table like some sacred offering, inside an ivory envelope sealed with a gold sticker, as if packaging could cleanse the rot inside. I didn't touch it at first. I stood over it, watching it sit there like it was breathing, like it might bite. Then I picked it up and went into the living room. I read it once, slowly, no interruptions. Just me, her voice on paper, and the quiet tick of the wall clock sounding like a countdown. It wasn't a confession. Not really. It was a curated version of events, dripping with justification. She wrote like a politician caught in a scandal, not a wife admitting to betrayal. Her apologies were little riddles. I'm sorry for the choices I made, but I felt like I didn't have a choice. Her tone was clinical, deliberate, and almost insulting in how removed it was from any trace of shame. She listed the names, 5 in total. 5. That's what she admitted to. 2 I already knew. 1 I'd suspected. And 2 were complete shocks. 1 was a coworker. 1 was my cousin. Yes, my cousin. The paragraph about him was short. Just 4 lines, as if the brevity would soften the impact. Didn't. I reread that section 3 times before folding the letter back up and setting it aside. She came into the room as I was pouring myself a glass of bourbon. No makeup, hair down, wearing the same old hoodie she used to throw on during lazy weekends. A calculated move. She wanted to look familiar, soft, harmless. Did you read it? She asked, curling her fingers around the sleeve cuffs like some kind of repentant child. I did. She waited for me to speak again. I didn't. I tried to be honest, she said. You tried to manage the damage, I said. There's a difference. I didn't include every single detail because I didn't think it would help. No, I said, turning to her. You didn't include every single detail because some parts still give you power. You don't want to lose all of it. Even now, you're protecting pieces of yourself. Her eyes narrowed. You asked for a confession. You didn't say it had to be a confession that made you feel better. I didn't ask for that letter to feel better, I said. I asked for it so that I could stop wondering if I was crazy. If I'd imagined the way things unraveled. You weren't crazy, she said quietly. You were just asleep. And just like that, the air snapped. I stepped closer to her. Asleep, I repeated. Is that what this was? Me trusting you? Me planning our future while you plotted new ways to erase it? Was that just me being unconscious? She held my gaze. You were asleep to who I really was. I gave you clues. You ignored all of them. You left hints, I said. Like a child hiding stolen cookies behind the couch. You wanted to be caught. You just didn't want to be held accountable. Her expression darkened. You want me to be a monster. It makes it easier. No, I said. You are a monster, but not the kind that growls and breaks things. You're the quiet kind. The kind that smiles in photos and poisons from the inside out. She stared at me, and for a second, something flickered. Something close to actual feeling. Not sadness. Not guilt. Just recognition. Like she finally saw the man in front of her as a separate entity. Not an accessory to her performance. So what now? She asked. Now I make sure the story doesn't stay yours, I said. You don't get to control how this ends. She stepped back, her mask slipping again. What does that mean? It means I'm going to talk, I said. To people who matter. To the ones who still believe in you. I'm not doing it to ruin you, Jessica. I'm doing it to unmask you. She crossed her arms. And when they ask why I did it, what are you going to say? I smiled. I won't have to say anything. I'll just show them the letter. She exhaled slowly, then said, You think that makes you the better person? No, I said. But it makes me the one who survived you. She turned to leave the room, and just before she reached the doorframe, I added, And Jessica? From now on, we don't speak unless it's through lawyers. She stopped for a beat, then walked out. Quiet. No slam. No tantrum. She knew. The war was over. And she'd lost. She moved out the following week. No fanfare. No dramatic suitcase slams or broken plates. Just a silent procession of boxes and forced politeness. She hired a moving service. Young guys with too much cologne and too little context, who grunted her life into the back of a truck while she directed them with robotic cheer. Careful with that one, she told one of them, pointing to a velvet box. It's delicate. I stood at the front window, arms folded, watching her instruct strangers how to carry the artifacts of her betrayal like they were art. She never once looked up at me. Not once. And yet everything about the way she moved screamed, I know you're watching. Because control for her wasn't about power anymore. It was about performance. When they finally loaded the last piece, she lingered at the doorway. You're not going to say anything? She asked, voice light, detached, like she was waiting for a scene that wasn't coming. I didn't move, didn't blink. I already said everything, I told her. She stepped out without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Not slammed, clicked. That was her final note. Subtle, controlled, hollow. Then the silence took over. You'd think I'd feel relief. I didn't. I felt something worse. Something colder. Clarity. She didn't just cheat. She rewrote my past while I was still living in it. I replayed everything now, our holidays, birthdays, even the dumb arguments about where to order takeout. Every single memory was infested, tainted with the quiet knowledge that she had already checked out long before I ever noticed. And that weekend it began. I didn't tell everyone. I told the right ones. Her boss, her assistant, the woman she shared a workspace with, the one she bragged about mentoring. I sent the letter, not anonymously, not bitterly, just one message with a scanned copy and a single line. If this version of Jessica affects your trust, imagine what the unwritten version looks like. I didn't get replies from all of them, didn't expect to, but I know people. I know silence when it carries weight. Her assistant forwarded me a message, accidentally, of course, confirming a conversation with HR. Quiet inquiries, the kind that start with whispers and end with locked desks and revoked access cards. Next came the social fallout. Lauren, our old neighbor, messaged me out of nowhere. She said she'd always thought Jessica was complicated. That's code. That's woman speak for, that bitch had it coming. Turns out, Jessica had been running side stories with people we saw every week. Stories where I was emotionally distant, manipulative, safe but dull. The kind of man you fall out of love with in movies. So I told Lauren the real story. All of it. She listened. She cried. Not for me, for herself. Because Jessica had borrowed money from her last year. Said she was helping me with a private business project. I never saw a cent. Do you want it back? Lauren asked. No, I said. I just wanted you to know. And one by one the threads snapped. Her image was fraying at the edges. Not because I exposed her, but because people were finally seeing what had always been there, disorder dressed as elegance. Manipulation wrapped in charm. And still she didn't reach out. No texts, no emails, just silence. Until Tuesday night. An email. Subject line. Closure. Short. Calculated. 5 sentences. I see what you're doing. I can't stop you. I won't try. But you don't need to destroy me to let me go. Let me disappear. Please. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted to forgive her. That ship hadn't just sailed, it had sunk. I stared because for the first time she was playing defense. No threats. No charm. No gaslighting wrapped in therapy language. Just retreat. I didn't reply. Because that's the thing she never understood. You don't get to write the ending after you've already shredded the book. And the next morning I mailed the original letter, not the copy, to her mother. No explanation. Just a yellow post-it on the first page. Thought you should know the daughter you raised. 3 days after I sent the letter to her mother, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring out. Then it rang again. I picked up on the third attempt, already knowing who it was. Her mother, Carolyn, had a voice like someone used to control, even more so than Jessica. A perfect balance of cold poise and suburban refinement. She didn't waste time with greetings. I received your letter. I figured. Is it real? She asked. Not angry. Not disbelieving. Just stunned. As if someone had told her the painting over her fireplace was a forgery. Yes, I said. All of it. She went silent for a moment. Then she exhaled sharply. A sound like she'd been holding her breath for years. I always thought something was off, she said. But I didn't think she was capable of this. I didn't know what to say to that. There's no handbook for when your mother-in-law finally sees her daughter for who she really is. But Carolyn kept going. She called me, screaming, said you were trying to ruin her life, that you were obsessed, that you were dangerous. I let that hang in the air for a second. And what did you say? I told her the truth, Carolyn said, voice hardening. I said, if half of what you wrote is real, then the person she's calling obsessed is the only one who ever tried to stay. That landed hard. Not because I needed her support, but because I never expected it. Jessica had always painted her mother as cold, transactional, impossible to please. But hearing Carolyn now, there was something real in her voice, something wounded. She's coming to stay with me, Carolyn said. Not by choice. She's being investigated at work now. Her lease fell through. Apparently, your little exposé triggered a background check. I didn't ask them to fire her, I said. You didn't have to, she replied. The truth travels on its own. There was a pause. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I think you deserve to know what your silence is doing. You're not shouting. You're not dragging her through the mud. You're just telling the right people. That's all I ever needed, I said. To be believed. Well, she said. Now you are. She hung up. That night, I opened an old email thread from over a year ago, before everything. It was one Jessica had sent me on our anniversary. It had a list of 10 things I love about you. I used to reread it on bad days. This time I read it with new eyes. Every line was a performance. Carefully worded flattery that now felt more like camouflage. I love how safe you make me feel. I love how you always believe in the best of people. Right? She didn't love those things. She used them. I closed the email, deleted it, emptied the trash folder. Felt better than I expected. The next day, I got a message from one of her old friends, Tessa. She and Jessica had been tight back in the early days. Book clubs, wine nights, matching Pinterest boards, the usual. But somewhere along the way they had fallen out. Jessica claimed it was because Tessa got too judgmental. Tessa's message read, "Hey, I don't want to stir the pot, but I saw your name come up and I think you should know. She was with someone else before the ski trip. 2019. That guy from her gym, remember? The trainer. She used to brag about it. Said you'd never figure it out. Said you were too decent to notice the dirt under her nails. I didn't say anything back then because I didn't want to be involved. I'm sorry." I stared at my screen. That was the year I'd almost proposed early, ahead of our anniversary. That was the year I took on extra hours to fund the cabin trip she said would be her dream birthday. That was the year she cried when I bought her the dog she claimed had saved her mental health. That dog died last month. Suddenly, the grief for it hit in a new way. Not because I missed the dog anymore. Because it had been the only real loyalty in the house. I didn't reply to Tessa. I didn't need to. She had done what few others had. She told the truth even late. It was enough. Everything was collapsing behind Jessica now. The job, the friends, the carefully curated social circle. Even the fake humility she used to wear like perfume, gone. And all I had done was shine a light. That's the thing people like her never understand. You don't have to destroy them. You just have to stop protecting them. The final piece fell into place on a rainy Wednesday. The kind of rain that feels like the sky is wringing itself out after a long, exhausting storm. I was sitting in the same diner where I'd met Mark, sipping the same bitter coffee, when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from Jessica. She hadn't called me in weeks. I stared at the screen, the little play button glowing like a dare. I waited 10 minutes before pressing it. Her voice was quieter this time. Not sad, not angry, just beaten. Like she'd finally realized the empire she built wasn't under attack. It had already fallen. "I know you've made your point. Loud and clear. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know if I ever did. Maybe I always needed someone to hate so I didn't have to hate myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. I hope someday you see this wasn't about you not being enough. It was about me never knowing what enough felt like. Goodbye. No tears. No drama. Just a quiet confession. Finally spoken without the usual performance. I deleted the voicemail. I wasn't keeping any more artifacts. I paid the check, left cash on the table and stepped outside. The rain had stopped. The street was slick, but the air had that clean post-storm feel. The kind that hits you right behind the ribs and makes you feel like something might be starting again, not ending. That night, I packed the last of her things from the attic. The scrapbook. The dusty boxes of shared Christmas ornaments. An old sweater of mine she used to sleep in, now untouched, buried in her box like a forgotten apology. I dropped the boxes off at her mother's house. Didn't ring the bell. Just left them there and drove away. Closure, it turns out, doesn't always come with a dramatic speech or a final confrontation. Sometimes it's just a quiet ride home with nothing left to say. In the weeks that followed, the silence in the house became familiar. Not painful. Not empty. Just clean. I started sleeping better. I cooked for one. I fixed the leaky sink she'd always complained about but never called someone to fix. I stopped waiting for the door to open at 7:42 p.m. with perfume and lies behind it. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I realized something strange. I missed the version of me that existed before her. The man who believed love meant loyalty by default. The man who trusted without question. Who thought silence was safety, who thought showing up was enough. I wasn't that man anymore. And thank God, Jessica didn't just teach me what betrayal feels like. She taught me how to rebuild. Not out of bitterness. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. And if you're reading this, whoever you are, if you're the guy wondering if your gut is lying to you, if you're the woman wondering if your kindness is being weaponized, if you're the partner staring at someone across the table who feels more like a stranger each day, let me say this. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not hard to love. They are just good at being hollow. Let them implode. You'll survive. You'll walk away. And one day the silence won't feel like punishment. It'll feel like peace.